Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is our first live stream. Finding in the morning time when I record these things, and then if I edit them and then I upload them, it takes a long time. So, just gonna see about trying to do it live, and hopefully this all works out. And so today it's the 1st of August. It's about 4 p.m. I've got a perimeter for the McKinney Fire I want to talk about. I want to look at the fire down by Sayad Valley, China Fire, and just kind of do a quick update on what's happening on McKinney Fire today, as far as I can tell from 200 miles away. So, big story is just that it's rained a bit, clouded in, smoke hanging around, and the fire's really been subdued, which is just pretty great. Better than any of us could have expected or hoped for. So, and many of you probably saw, we updated some new maps this morning on the lookout. Last night when they flew the fire, as often happens when there's thunderstorms, it was too smoky really for them to get a great look at what was going on. There was portions where the mapping didn't work out. So we just got some new intel flowing around 11 o'clock, 11:45. That kind of fills in some gaps from last night. So anyway, the big story is last night there wasn't a lot of movement on the fire. Really in the last 24 hours. There was some growth here on the north side of the fire. In the Beaver Creek burn. And they're going direct over here, meaning that they're cutting line right against the fire. As we mentioned earlier, there's been, after the fire there was salvage logging, and they've controlled the brush with herbicides, etc. So mainly it's grass carrying the fire in there. And I got a comment from someone. They're saying, well, you said that this slowed down the fire, and they thought I was saying that it's a good thing that we clear cut and spray all the brush, and that's not what I was saying. I was just saying that there's not much fuel there, and it's helping the fire not spread. So the orange lines here are data we're getting from the fire risk program from OES, and the way they deliver it just kind of stacks up with the previous version, so you can kind of see like a growth increment there of the last 24 hours. And so the red line and this dark orange are places that the fire was mapped last night at midnight. So basically, anywhere you're seeing the orange line standing out from the red fill, those are places that either the fire's grown or that weren't mapped last night because of clouds. So basically what it's showing is just not a lot of growth going on the fire right now. So we're going to kind of spin around a little here and just get some different perspectives on the fire. Had some people in Scott Valley that were wanting a little more detail on what's happening on that side of the fire. So I'm just going to jump out here, and you can see Fort Jones. I've got the creeks labeled here: McAdams Creek, Indian Creek, Tyler Gulch Road. The black lines are from this morning's operations map, basically of either places that bulldozer line's already been built or where they're planning to build dozer line. In this kind of headwaters here of Deadwood Creek and Indian Creek, I think there's not a lot of great places right in there for them to put dozer line. And so they're looking at dozer line on the ridges, and then as long as the weather's cooperating, it sounds like they're going to be trying to go as direct as possible on the fire here, probably tying together roads that they can fire off of, other places hand line to connect roads. As you can see, the fire's moved downhill, maybe 100 yards in some places. One thing I mentioned yesterday is that even during summertime and what we consider to be extreme fire season, we can get some really good ecological effects. And someone made a comment on here. They thought that, right now during a fire when there's all this drama and trauma, that it's not a good time for me to talk about good fire. And I disagree. Because good fires, it's not my opinion whether or not fire's good. There's actually like ecological markers or results. You go out in the woods and you see where a fire's gone through, and you see that the brush is killed and the small trees are killed and the big trees are healthy. That's good fire. It's just science. It's not really politics or anything else. So when I'm talking about good fire, oftentimes I'm talking about measurable effects of hey, the fire burned through here and the trees are still alive and the land's healthier than it was before the fire. So obviously, how the fire burned, when it burned, has a lot to do with that. Obviously this whole area that ripped off in, less than 12 hours had a lot of high severity destructive fire, and we're not saying that that's a good thing. But as this fire backs down here into these creeks, it's not unlikely, especially with this moist weather and good relative humidities, that we're getting similar effects from this backing fire as we would with prescribed burning. So hopefully there's a little, silver lining there. I'm not trying to minimize the pain for anyone who's lost their house or who's, sucking a lot of smoke or having a rough time with this fire disrupting their life. Anyway, we'll see what happens there. I think the thing to keep in mind is that with a lot of these big fires, they burn for weeks or months sometimes. And a lot happens during that time. We'll be sitting here in this cool weather with rain sprinkling on us, getting some good fire. And then maybe tomorrow there'll be a thunderstorm that blows the fire somewhere else. And maybe a week from now, the fire's going to stand up and do something that we didn't even think about at all. So that's the problem with, talking about managing wildfire or managing fires for resource benefit, is that once the fire's on the ground, you can't really take it back. And we still have a lot of burning season ahead of us. So lots going on there when we talk about, managing fires for resource benefit, obviously. But in general, this backing fire, hopefully we get some good out of it. In the meantime, it's making it easier for them to pick it up. One of the problems that we do have with trying to go direct on fires, even when they're laying down, is just rollout. So in places where we've got a lot of down logs or anything else, trying to put a line underneath it and things are burning and kind of coming unstuck from the ground. You think of a log laying in the ground, kind of held in place by a bunch of pine needles. You burn out all those pine needles, and then that log wants to roll downhill. So treacherous for firefighters. You get rollout, you get fire down below you. It's not an uncommon way to get burn over. So steep ground is going to make it hard for people to, even if the conditions are good, that's the reason that we often go indirect, is just because rollout and other things make it kind of impossible sometimes to hold mid-slope lines. Okay, so just to get our orientation here, we're going to come around and look north, looking down Humbug Creek, which is next kind of major drainage over from Wairika once you get over the main ridge. So here's Wairika. The plan right now, quite a bit of it's already been done, is dozer line up this ridge, dozer line as far down to the river as possible, hand line. And then that's kind of plan B. And in the meantime, going direct, as far as I can tell, on as much of this as possible to pick it up. One thing that I think is interesting about this fire and this piece of landscape is just that it's really on this kind of climatic divide. So when we zoom out and kind of look at the whole landscape here, the west side of the fire is greener, more moisture, but this whole area is kind of sitting in this rain shadow of the Klamath Mountains and Marble Mountains up here. And so we're kind of on what we call this east side kind of dryness. So really, once all this timber got burnt, we're into this part of the landscape where it's more like desert, right? We got brush and grass, and these are the kinds of fuels that, especially where it's dominated by grass, that respond quicker to changes in humidity. You can have a couple wet days in the forest, and it still doesn't change the fact that logs are just bone dry from seasons of drought. But in grass, stuff responds pretty much immediately to humidity changes. And so that actually is buying us some advantages, because the fire is moving into an area where we just have a lot more of the main carrier is got grass in it. So orange line, I think what we see here is not that the fire grew there from last night, but just that this is one of those lines where they couldn't see where the fire was because of heavy clouds. Anyway, that's pretty good news right now for Wairika, that the fire hasn't been moving at all. Still looking north. We're going to swing around here and kind of come in above Scott Bar on Mill Creek and the Scott River Road. some really steep ground here. These are planned dozer lines. I don't know how much of it's been done yet. Fire here also is just, it's really not packing very fast. There are sections in here with the clear cuts, as we talked about earlier, with changes in humidity and everything, is just that these areas dry out quicker. So if we have if the fire's just kind of skunking along and not doing much, and then we've got a couple really dry days, these are places where if you do get a spot or roll out into them, it can grow quickly. One of the things that we're seeing on this fire is that there's kind of this double-edged sword where we aren't getting a lot of aircraft support on this fire for a good portion of the day because of all the smoke hanging in. So the smoke suppresses the fire behavior, cools the atmosphere, and generally kind of just moderates the whole burning environment. Also means that we can't get aircraft support. And that's important for a couple reasons. One of the big reasons is just that when you do have aircraft support and you do get a spot fire into something like a clear cut, if you got a couple heavy helicopters around, you can really make a lot of hay putting it out. If you got a lot of smoke when that's going on, you may not have those helicopters. Another thing that we talk about a lot now is medical evacuation. We've had firefighters who've died because we couldn't get them out to hospital in time when there were accidents. And so when we do have all the smoke lying in, it makes it harder for people to commit hotshot crews and other crews deeper into the backcountry, where you've got a long time to get them to help if they get hit by a snag or rolling rock or something bad happens. So all these things kind of factor into the tactics that get chosen, and also just into where we put people and how we decide to do it. Anyway, not a lot to report there, which is, I think, a big relief to everyone. We've got over here on the north side of the fire, close to the California state line, a new fire. Pretty remote. And they have mapped some spots on that. I don't have much intel on this particular fire. It's got a different name, which escapes me at the moment. Okay, we're going to just cruise down Highway 96 here, Sayad Valley. And this is a China fire. As I said, fire risks, they stack their perimeters so you can see kind of growth. I don't know if they flew it yesterday. Let's see if this will tell us. 152 acres, 1652. So yeah, this was flown 2 days ago at 7 p.m. And then this was flown yesterday. So it looks like we don't have a new perimeter for it. Quite a bit of growth there. I think, one thing that we know about this country is just like there's no such thing as a small timber fire mid-slope in the Klamath in hot, dry conditions. It takes a lot of resources to really get these things wrapped. But what you can see here also is that this thing's also kind of run out of slope. So we talked about backing fire. Fires run to the top of the hill, and then they just kind of don't have anywhere they don't like to run downhill unless we've got really wild weather. So they're going to use the road system here, it looks like, to contain parts of it. We'll have to just keep an eye on it. Don't have a lot to tell you about this fire. The other thing that we were watching was over here by Etna. There's a couple other fires here in the backcountry. Shackleford. This is one of the fires I was thinking about when I was saying there's no such thing as a small mid-slope fire in this country. But you can also see that it's kind of on knob here, and it also kind of, we kind of caught a break that it got to a less severe slope. But we get used to earlier in the season having this kind of a lot of horsepower with aircraft, and so like we saw in Washburn and the Oak Fire, that having 3 or 4 heavy helicopters at your disposal, you can kind of do miraculous things. And then we get into fires in these steep canyons when there's other fires in the area, and we lose that resource. So people who are kind of calling the shots on these fires, they just have a lot of different things they have to kind of keep in mind. When's the smoke going to lift out in the morning? Am I going to lose my helicopter to initial attack somewhere else? Will I have enough resources without that? Can I safely commit resources to this fire without air support? So we had some pretty wild weather yesterday, just with some of those crazy smoke clouds, the outflow winds. Not sure on this live stream action how to kind of mix things in and out very well. So I'm going to avoid jumping around too much. So I'll wrap this up right now. Thanks for supporting Lookout. We appreciate all the donations you guys sent yesterday. And we'll keep you posted. Kind of glad that things are a little slow. We've been sick around here, and I needed to catch some sleep. So we don't really keep a real fixed schedule here. Oftentimes I won't post a video until I've got new intel, just because I want to have something worth sharing. So you can follow our Twitter feed for kind of, I'll try to let people know what we're waiting for. And the Twitter feed is wildland_ZKO. Good luck, everyone.